You're in a meeting, or on a plane, or standing in line at the grocery store, and suddenly your body sends a message, not a text, not an email, a very clear, very urgent signal, it's time. And what do? You smile, you nod, you keep standing in line, you ignore it, because obviously this is not the time or the place. But here's the thing, somewhere inside you, an entire team just got a message too, and that message was, hold everything. Today we're going inside your body to meet the team that handles this and find out what actually happens when you tell them to wait. Let's start with the brain. The brain is the one who makes the call, not because he's mean, not because he doesn't care. He's just practical. He looks around, checks the room, checks the schedule, and decides, nope, not now. To the brain, this feels like a completely reasonable decision. A quick pause, no big deal. He sends the order down the chain, hold it, and somewhere downstairs, two very specific employees receive that order, the rectum and the sphincter. But before we meet them properly, let's talk about timing, because the urge to go doesn't just appear randomly. There's actually a built-in system for this called the gastrocolic reflex. Basically, when food enters your stomach, especially after a meal, it sends a signal further down the line. New cargo is coming in, time to move the old stuff out. That's why a lot of people feel the urge shortly after eating. It's not a coincidence. It's your body's own scheduling system working exactly as designed, which means every time you override that signal, you're not just delaying a random event, you're overriding a very deliberate, very well-timed announcement. Now back to the rectum. The rectum's job is simple. When stool arrives, he stretches slightly and sends a signal upward. We're ready. That's the urge you feel. It's not random, it's a scheduled announcement, but the moment the brain says, hold it, the rectum has to do something a little unnatural. He has to relax back down and just wait. Meanwhile, the sphincter, a small ring of muscle standing guard at the exit, gets a very specific instruction. Stay shut, no matter what. So he does. He plants his feet, crosses his arms, and holds the door. For a few minutes, this is totally fine. The sphincter is built for exactly this kind of short-term duty. The problem starts when a few minutes turns into a few hours, because while the rectum and sphincter are holding the line, someone else is quietly still working. The colon. The colon's main job, among other things, is absorbing water from waste before it gets sent downstream. Under normal conditions, this is a well-timed process. But when stool sits around longer than expected, the colon just keeps doing what it does. It keeps absorbing water and absorbing. Picture a sponge sitting in the sun. The longer it sits, the drier and harder it gets. That's exactly what's happening inside you right now. The stool that was originally soft and easy to pass is slowly turning into something firmer, denser, harder to move. Now, one delay like this, not a big deal. Your body handles it. The rectum relaxes, the colon adjusts, and eventually, when the time is right, everything proceeds as planned. The problem is what happens when this becomes a pattern, meeting after meeting, day after day. Every single time, the same order comes down, hold it. And every single time, the rectum and sphincter comply. Here's where it gets interesting. The rectum, like most employees who get overruled again and again, starts to change his behavior. His walls, stretched out repeatedly to accommodate the weight, slowly become a little less sensitive. The urge that used to arrive loud and clear, now it's quieter. Sometimes it barely shows up at all. Scientists have a name for this. They call it a diminished urge response. Your body calls it, wait, was I supposed to go earlier? Meanwhile, the colon has a completely different problem. All that repeated water absorption doesn't just make one uncomfortable trip, it builds up. Stool that keeps getting held, keeps getting drier, keeps getting harder, starts to pile up along the walls of the colon. This is what doctors call constipation. Not just, I didn't go today, but a slow, ongoing traffic jam that gets worse the longer it's ignored. And once things are this backed up, the next bowel movement isn't just delayed, it's difficult. The sphincter, who was only ever built to hold the door, now has to deal with something much bigger and harder trying to get through. This means straining, real physical pressure, and straining puts stress on the blood vessels around the rectum and anus. When those vessels get irritated and swollen, they become hemorrhoids. Painful, itchy, sometimes they even bleed. In other cases, the pressure is so intense it actually creates a small tear called an anal fissure. Neither of these are dangerous on their own, but they are, without question, extremely unpleasant. And here's the cruel irony. Once you have hemorrhoids or a fissure, going to the bathroom becomes painful. So what do? You start avoiding it. You start holding it in even more, which makes the constipation worse, which makes the straining worse, which makes the hemorrhoids worse. It's a loop, and it's one your body did not sign up for. It's worth mentioning, this loop doesn't just affect the body. Over time, people who repeatedly associate bathroom visits with pain or urgency can develop a kind of avoidance habit where going to the bathroom itself starts to feel stressful. Doctors sometimes see this pattern in children, especially kids who had one painful experience and started holding it in specifically to avoid feeling that pain again, which ironically only makes the next attempt harder. It's the same loop, just starting earlier in life. Now, most of the time, this is where the story ends. Uncomfortable, annoying, manageable. But every so often, researchers have looked deeper into what happens when this becomes a long-term chronic habit. Some studies have found that stool sitting in the colon for extended periods can increase bacterial buildup along the colon's inner lining, which may raise the risk of inflammation over time. In rare, extreme cases, doctors have documented something called fecal impaction, where the stool becomes so hard and compacted it simply cannot pass on its own. Even rarer than that, there have been isolated case reports involving serious complications from prolonged, severe holding. These extreme outcomes are not common. Most people who occasionally hold it in are completely fine, but they're a reminder that this system, quiet as it is, isn't something to ignore indefinitely. So what's the actual takeaway here? It's not never hold it in, ever, under any circumstances. Sometimes you really are in a meeting. Sometimes the only bathroom around is one you'd rather not use. Your body understands that. It's built for short delays. The problem is when holding it in becomes your default setting, when the rectum sends the signal and you override it every single time out of habit rather than necessity. Think about it this way. If a coworker raised their hand to ask a question and you told them not now every single time they tried, eventually they'd stop raising their hand. Not because the question went away, because they gave up trying to be heard. That's essentially what happens to the rectum when its signal gets ignored often enough. The good news is that this system is remarkably good at recovering. Go when your body tells you to most of the time. Drink enough water so the colon doesn't have to work overtime. Eat enough fiber so stool doesn't turn into cement in the first place. Movement helps too. A short walk can actually nudge the whole system along, since physical activity gently stimulates the colon's natural rhythm, and your rectum, sphincter, and colon will happily go back to running one of the smoothest, most underappreciated systems in your entire body. Your organs aren't asking for much, just a little less hold it. If you learned something weird and slightly uncomfortable today, subscribe. Your body has plenty more stories like this one, hiding right beneath the surface.